A little while ago, I told you I was going to go iPad only, and I've got a confession to make. Okay, so I have honestly tried to go iPad only, but I can't. I've just found that I'm more welded to the Mac than I thought I was, and that is quite disappointing. You may be disappointed in me. I'm sorry. I feel like I'm going to be told off by my mum or my school teacher. I've genuinely tried. I've tried to take this thing, this iPad Pro with the Magic Keyboard, and just use it full time. But there are several reasons that I can't do that, which I'm going to explain in this video, and it has got me thinking about who can actually do that. You know, who can go iPad only and drop the Mac, and equally, who shouldn't? And I think I've worked it out, which is what I'm going to talk about in this video. I am doing some traveling around London and stuff at the moment, so I'll be in different locations, but yeah, let's try and talk it through. Firstly, if there's one thing I do love about the iPad, it's adding accessories to it, and one of my favourite accessory manufacturers is Benks, and they are very kindly sponsoring this video, and there's two of their products I want to show you very quickly. The first is an alternative to this, which is the second generation Apple Pencil, £140. The USB-C version, which is this one here, is 70 quid. The Benks version is £40, and it does so much of the same stuff. It's got the same magnetic attachment for charging. It's just as accurate as the Apple Pencil, and it even has this little button on the top which glows to indicate charging and pairing, and you can press that button to do stuff in iPad OS. It doesn't have pressure sensitivity, but that's pretty much the only thing missing from this compared to the much more expensive Apple alternative. If you use your iPad for note-taking, this is a no-brainer. Next up we have the Infinity Pro stand, which is a magnetic iPad stand. So if you have an iPad like the iPad Air that has a magnetic rear casing, you can basically attach your iPad to this and take it anywhere because this folds down. So we can very easily do that, stick it in the bag and take it to the coffee shop. It also has this swiveling base, which makes it very useful if you're doing a demonstration or something and you need to very quickly turn your iPad around and show someone something. And like all of Benks' accessories, this is so well made, it can really take some stick, and it just makes your iPad so much more versatile. And the best news is, I've worked with Benks to get you a massive 20% discount site-wide. So to find out more about the brilliant Benks pen and the fantastic Infinity Pro stand, just click that link. Okay, let's start with the Mac and arguments for using the Mac full-time. For me, and I've said this a few times in the past, I know, the Mac just feels like a nice, warm, old pair of slippers. I know that sounds a bit old-fashioned, but I am a bit old-fashioned myself. It's just how familiar macOS feels, and a great example of this is working with files. Because no matter how much Apple tweaks the Files app in iPadOS and introduces new multitasking methods on that platform, it never feels like the Mac. If I have to work with files on the iPad, it just feels like a massive faff, whereas on the Mac, it's that warm pair of slippers. Finding old files, moving files around, moving files into apps, emailing files, all of that stuff just feels a little bit impenetrable on the iPad. The second thing is Pro apps, and I'm sorry guys, but they're still not quite there on the iPad. Logic Pro is very, very close. I can't believe how much stuff they've packed into Logic Pro on the iPad. But when it comes to, again, editing files, editing audio files, getting files ready for a podcast edit, I always turn to the Mac. And then we have video editing, and this is where things really fall apart for the iPad because Final Cut Pro on the iPad is a good effort, but that's all it is. It's just not complete enough to switch from the Mac to the iPad to do my video editing, which is the main part of production in my business. And the main reason for that is the infuriating inability to work from external SSDs. Then we have multitasking, which I touched on a moment ago, and I'm sorry, Stage Manager does not work. And all of the kind of multitasking things that Apple keeps bolting onto iPadOS just don't work for me. Whereas on the Mac, I can multitask with my eyes closed. Then we have customizability, and no, I don't tinker with my Mac until the nth degree, but you can if you want to, and there's no denying the fact that you can't get your hands quite as dirty with iPadOS. Next up we have the price, and this is a bit contentious, I know, but if you want to get yourself a very capable MacBook, I would go for an M1 MacBook Air. And the reason for that is because they are still incredibly powerful computers, and you can pick them up for a very good price either on the second-hand market or on the Apple refurb store. And if you compare the cost of one of those to an iPad Pro with a Magic Keyboard, the latter gets very expensive. Okay, so what about the iPad? Why would you go iPad only? And to start with, it's only fair I talk about the price. And that's because you don't have to buy the iPad Pro, the iPad Air, the iPad 10th generation, which is a bit strange but still cheaper than MacBooks, and obviously the iPad Mini. They're all much lower points of entry in terms of cost compared to the MacBook Air and the MacBook Pro. Then you have the fact that the iPad is easily the most distraction-free device going. And this is where that multitasking stuff doesn't matter, because I don't want to multitask on the iPad. This is particularly useful if I'm writing. I just want to focus on that task in hand. And on the Mac, I get more distracted than I do on the iPad. And that lack of customizability on the iPad that I mentioned earlier doesn't matter for some users. In fact, it's a benefit, because if you really try and fiddle with your Mac, you can break it. I challenge you to customize your iPad so much that you break it. You'll try, I know, but trust me, you can't do it. The iPad also has a cellular option, and I don't think we're ever going to see that on the Mac. Then we have the two big ones, and for those, I'm going back to the studio because it's cold, wet, and horrible. The first thing is the most obvious, which is the touchscreen. This is the biggest point of differentiation between the Mac and the iPad, and it completely changes your relationship with this device. It just makes the iPad more modern, and I don't think we'll ever see a touchscreen Mac. And don't forget, on the iPad, you can combine touch input with trackpad input and a keyboard. You can't do that on the Mac. For me, the touchscreen nearly makes the iPad the default device, and the fact that I add a paper-like screen protector to every iPad I have makes a massive difference. Guys, if you haven't tried a paper-like screen protector, please give it a go. Honestly, it's one of these things that you can't really appreciate until you have one. And as the name suggests, it turns the surface of the iPad display into something that feels spookily like paper. And if you use this touchscreen to take notes or draw or illustrate or whatever it might be, if you're using this with this, the Paperlike makes a massive difference. Paperlike offers a fantastic Pro bundle that gets you the Paperlike screen protector, the Apple Pencil grip, and the brand new version of their cleaning kit. This new version is slightly thinner, it's got a smoother spray, and you can refill it with pellets. And the way it works is fantastic. You just pop it out of the casing, you spray your screen, give it a wipe. If you want to check out that Pro bundle or just the Paperlike screen protector, click that link below. Next up, you have the camera system, which you do get on the Mac, but it's just a front-facing camera for FaceTime calls. On the iPad, you get a rear camera like this one on the iPad Pro. They're fantastic quality, and in the iPad Pro's case, you get more than one lens. And again, on the iPad Pro, you can take video shot on this camera and put it straight into Final Cut Pro. You can't do that on the Mac, and if you're the sort of person who wants to use one device for content creation, it's a game changer. Okay, so which one is right for you? Well, I think you fall into one of three categories. The first one is Mac only. This is your main device. It's your point of safety. It's your warm pair of slippers. You may not even have an iPad, but if you have got an iPad, is it even charged? The next one is iPad only. This is your main device. You can barely remember a time with a laptop, and actually you may never have experienced laptop life. And number three is Mac and iPad, and I think I slip into this category fairly neatly because I can't live without this, but I really enjoy using this. If someone chucked me onto a desert island and I had to take just one of these, it would be the Mac. And I'm sorry, but until the iPad gets proper Pro app support from things like Final Cut Pro, I just can't switch to this full time. But I'd love to know which category are you in and why. Get involved below. And if you're thinking about buying an iPad right now, it's quite a tricky decision, but I have made a buying guide. So keep watching for a link.